Celebrating 49 years on the air, award-winning Farm Week is a production of Mississippi State University Extension.
Today on Farm Week, trade tensions rising, a lot more than soybeans at stake. In Southern gardening, play it coy. Eddie takes landscaping to a whole new level. In the markets, the WASDE held up by the shutdown, but what makes that report so popular? And finally, with our 50th season right around the corner, a look back at our very first feature. Farm Week starts right now.
Hello everyone, I'm Zach Ashmore.
And I'm Mike Russell. Great to have you with us once again here on Farm Week. Well, the government shutdown continues and as of this recording enters its third week. It's anyone's guess how long this one will last. Meanwhile, the White House and Congress continue their back and forth and China jockeys for position. David Miller has more.
As American soybeans came out of the field this week, farmers looked for clues as to what trade resolutions might come from the Trump White House. Late last week, the administration hinted at a deal, or at the least, that aid might be coming to help offset losses from sales to China. This would be the second round of trade aid from a President Trump-led USDA, which used the current government shutdown as a reason for why new assistance would be delayed. Trump and China's President Xi were slated to talk in person in less than a month, but those talks are in jeopardy after Chinese officials outlined new restrictions on the export of rare earth elements late in the week. President Trump is looking for more gains on things outside of agriculture, like intellectual property rights, stopping the flow of fentanyl, and increasing access to critical minerals. China has urged the U.S. to remove what they call unreasonable tariffs in order for them to resume soybean trade. Many farmers are still asking for trade and not aid.
A trade deal with China would mean a lot. It really would. That's our number one customer. I mean, our number one customer won't do business with us right now, and we really need that to happen in the next year.
There was some movement in the trade battle between the U.S. and Brazil, following a phone call where President Lula da Silva asked President Trump to remove a 40% tariff on Brazilian goods. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio invited Brazilian Foreign Minister Mauro Vieira to an in-person meeting. No word on when that meeting will take place.
Great Prime Minister.
Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney came to Washington this week looking for relief from tariffs hitting steel, aluminum, and energy products imposed by their biggest trading partner. Canadian officials are looking for relief from specific import taxes, but they say expectations are low.
We are the second largest trading partner of the United States. We do a lot of trade going across the border where we're cooperating, first thing. Secondly, we are the largest foreign investor in the United States.
He's an extremely popular.
Carney's meeting with Trump comes in the run-up to next year's review of the United States-Mexico-Canada trade agreement.
In the weeks ahead, we'll ask the question again with an encore feature: are wolves endangered? 5 years ago, they were removed from the endangered species list after decades of protection. But a couple of months ago, a federal judge reversed that ruling. Now in Sierra County, California, they're showing up in a valley where they generally haven't been seen before. And so the running standoff between ranchers and wolves is happening in another venue. Reporter Maricela de la Cruz has the story.
It's a valley that since the 1800s has been thriving with agriculture and cattle raising. Today, the Sierra Valley still farms hundreds of cows from the time they're born to the time they're ready to be sold. But the once thriving business,
I don't think there's any real safe place,
has recently come under a new threat.
They must have been pretty hungry that morning because they pretty much cleaned him up.
Jim Janassi is one of the many ranchers impacted by gray wolf attacks on their livestock. And their presence in this landscape is new after completely disappearing by the 1920s. Today, gray wolves are part of a recovering endangered species protected at the state and federal level. And as they've moved into Sierra County, they've had an abundance of prey.
When we first shipped our cattle in here right away, we had a couple of wolf depredations. We didn't have any more trouble until around the 4th of July, and then we've had some significant losses since then.
Most of which are calves. But not all of the attacks result in livestock being consumed by these predators. Ranchers tell us oftentimes their cows are injured to the point where they have to end their suffering themselves. And it's ultimately costing them way too much.
To get rid of the wolves in some way and get them out of this valley would be the best solution. These wolves, they go kill cattle every night.
Ranchers say they're not asking for the eradication of gray wolves, but they are asking for help from the state to help manage the situation. In an effort to support ranchers, California Fish and Wildlife have deployed their first strike team. But those affected say it's not enough.
It's nice what the Fish and Game is trying to do to help us, but the bottom line is nothing's going to work unless you lessen the population of wolves, or if there's killers, get rid of those killers.
In Sierra County, Marisela de la Cruz, KCRA 3 News.
On the lighter side, can we be coy for just a minute? No, not that kind of coy, this kind. I think this is the first time we've done a story on an actual koi pond and the greenery around it. Very unique for Mississippi. Here's Eddie Smith with the showcase.
There's just something special about a koi pond. Today on Southern Gardening, we're exploring a charming backyard garden with a koi pond that beautifully blends structure, texture, and color in the landscape. One of the stars here is papyrus, with its tall stems and umbrella-like tops that add height and drama to the planting. It's a natural choice for pond edges, where its roots can stay moist and happy. Behind the pond, bold-leaved elephant ears add a tropical flair. Their heart-shaped leaves make a strong backdrop and provide contrast with the finer textures of irises, grasses, and hostas. You can't help but notice the hostas with their chartreuse and variegated foliage. These plants thrive in shade and bring bright splashes of color to soften the stone edges of the pond. And no pond would be complete without its living jewels. Colorful koi fish glide effortlessly through the water, their bright orange, white, and golden patterns adding constant motion and color to the garden. Not only do they bring life to the pond, but their presence makes the space feel truly alive and dynamic. Boxwood shrubs anchor the front border, offering structure and evergreen appeal. Their neat shapes balance the free-flowing foliage around the pond, creating a finished look. With the right combination of plants, a few artistic touches, and colorful koi, you can transform a corner of your backyard into a cool and inviting escape. I'm Eddie Smith, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Southern Gardening.
We'll take a break right here, but don't go away. Coming up in our Farm Week feature as we go deeper into our 49th season, a treat. We venture back in time to a story that aired in the premiere of Farm Week all the way back in October of 1977. You may have seen this one, all about Miss Lillian Thornton, who raised livestock near Raymond, Mississippi, all by herself after her husband passed away. Story told in her own words. That's coming up on Farm Week. Don't go away.
I believe in people and their hopes, their aspirations and their faith. I believe that education, of which extension work is an essential part, is basic in stimulating individual initiative, self-determination, and leadership. I believe that these are the keys to democracy, and that people, when given facts they understand, will act not only in their self-interest, but also in the interest of society. I believe in intellectual freedom to search for and present the truth without bias and with courteous tolerance towards the views of others. Because I believe these things, I am an extension professional.
Walk across the great state of Mississippi with us. Join the Walk Mississippi and Live Healthy, One Step at a Time program. The Mississippi State University Extension Service is offering this virtual challenge for individuals of any age or teams of family, colleagues, students, church members, or any other group. We're walking 180 miles in 6 weeks, or about 8,000 steps per day, from October 11th to November 21st. Get fit and feel better. Eat healthier, manage your weight, and exercise regularly. There's no fee required, and you'll join our virtual community support group on Facebook and our weekly email list to get health education tips, nutritious recipes, and video demos. Fit more physical activity into your schedule and learn more about the benefits of eating healthy. Visit msuext.ms/walkms to learn more and register today. This month's WASDE report would have dropped recently, but the current government shutdown has postponed it indefinitely. That leads us to the question, what exactly goes into preparing the WASDE report? Well, in 1999, former FarmWeek anchor Leighton Spann went to Washington, D.C. to find out. Here's his encore report.
From the outside, it looks like any other Thursday afternoon at the USDA South Building in Washington, D.C. On the inside, though, it's obvious that preparations are underway for something important. A portion of the 5th floor hallway has been secured. Special steel doors like these are closed and locked to limit access by elevator as well as on foot. Opaque vinyl shades with steel reinforcers are drawn over each window in this area of the building and sealed. The USDA's National Ag Statistics Service, or NASS, is beginning a lockup to prepare and release a monthly crop production report and the world's supply and demand estimates. By 7 o'clock the next morning, as the nation's capital comes to life, the report's contents, production forecasts for corn, wheat, soybeans, cotton, and other crops have been finalized. We were allowed into the lockup area here on the 5th floor of the USDA South Building about 1 hour before release of the report, but USDA employees actually working on the numbers have been at it since midnight. Mississippi's Commissioner of Agriculture, Dr. Lester Spell, and a group of 4 county extension agents also arrive at the entrance to the lockup area before 7:30 to be in place to observe the official release of the reports. The group is admitted only after presenting proper credentials that were issued in advance. We enter through a double-door closure in serpentine fashion, another aspect of the physical security that surrounds the crop numbers.
That's so I couldn't stand down here and wave at somebody outside in the hallway. And it works very effectively, as you can tell. A little inconvenient as you came through, especially with a group, but it still works very well.
Again, the whole idea behind the lockup approach is to prevent anyone from getting early access to the crop information and having an obvious advantage in trading. In a nearby room, also within the lockup area, a huge photocopier is churning out copies of the crop production report. The first copies of the report had to be available by 7 a.m. for members of the news media. The media are allowed into this special room within the lockup area and given a copy of the crop numbers an hour and a half before the scheduled release time. This allows the reporters for organizations such as Reuters, Bloomberg, and the Wall Street Journal to have their stories and tables on the crop report prepared by the official release time of 8:30 a.m. To ensure that the information stays within the media room and the lockup area until that hour, all telephone lines have been turned off, and all pagers, cellular phones, and other communication devices have been surrendered.
There's a clock in there on the wall which is hooked to the National Bureau of Standards, and that's what we release the report by. At 8:29, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to tell them that they can turn on their equipment but not transmit. And then at exactly 8:30, I'm going to say go, and within just a second, that stuff will be all around the world.
Secretary of Agriculture Dan Glickman entered the lockup area on the 5th floor less than 10 minutes before the release time. Not even Glickman, the USDA's top administrator, knew the contents of the report in advance.
I sign it before I read it.
He signs it before he reads it.
The report is not considered official and thus cannot be officially released out of the lockup area until Dan Glickman or an Undersecretary of Agriculture signs it. Back down the hallway in the media room, Bill Pratt, the Secretary of the Ag Statistics Board, turns the electronic switch, restoring telephone communications to the area just in time, 8:30 a.m.
Go!
The actual numbers and analysis of the crop production report and the World Agricultural Supply and Demand estimates are then released by reporters using computer modems, fax machines, and telephones. And within 5 minutes of the release time, the information is also available over the internet from the National Ag Statistics Service homepage on the World Wide Web. The numbers in the report were hammered out in this room within the lockup area by the members of the Agricultural Statistics Board. Sitting around this conference table at built-in computer terminals, the board members began their work at midnight and spent about 30 minutes on each crop. The survey data they were reviewing on each crop in order to set the numbers had been transmitted to Washington by NASA's network of state statistical offices and kept on diskettes in a safe until this day. State statisticians use a combination of crop enumerators, personnel who actually visit fields and make ground observations of crops, as well as telephone calls to farmers to put together the data. Mississippi statistician Tommy Gregory says although the reference date on the report is September 1st, the sheer size of the information gathering process requires that it be spread out a few days before and after that date.
The objective yield count started on the 25th of August. We had enumerators were out in 170 fields across Mississippi. Telephone calls to individual farmers started right after September 1.
For the 4 Mississippi County Extension agents who observed the release of the September 1999 crop report, there is a greater appreciation now for the importance of providing accurate statistical information.
So it kind of lets me know what I do in the county in terms of ag statistical reporting, let me know how important it is and how it's all being used, and also it brings a more of a global perspective too into the data and the outcomes.
From Washington, D.C., I'm Leighton Spann reporting.
Recently, we began our 49th season of Farm Week, a tradition that goes all the way back to October 3rd, 1977. That Monday night so long ago, we ran our very first feature story all about a widow in central Mississippi who raised cattle on her own and shared her ideas about life.
I grew up on a farm with 12 of us, 9 boys and 3 girls, and I must have learned a great deal about some forms of farming, especially cotton farming at that time, and so it hasn't seemed too hard for me. My lawyer said when my husband died nearly 11 years ago for me to make no changes. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, I mean for you to make no changes. I said, what I'm going to do with all those black Angus cows that my husband has bought that we have. He said, you're going to keep them. You know as much about it as he did. And I did. So I did keep them, and that, I think, has really meant almost the salvation of my life and my mind, because I was so busy I didn't have time to maybe grieve like I would have. I'm 81. I guess you might say I've been farming about nearly 11 years since my husband died. If I'm going to farm, I have no one to help. Therefore, I have to do whatever comes to be done. It matters not what it is. I have to find a way if I don't know how. I build my own gates. I hang them. I have a circular saw that I saw all the parts, measure all parts for a gate. Saw them all here at the house where I have electricity. Carry them to the place that I'm going to hang it. Build the gate and then hang it by way of lifts, maybe tubs, or concrete blocks or whatever, till I have nailed the hinges on and hang it. My husband had all of the fencing done before he died, but there's always breaks of one kind and another, and I repair. I have a stretcher, and usually I don't have to use a stretcher. I use 2 hammers most times to repair. I have Black Angus cattle, purebred, registered. I usually keep 100 head of cattle, but I've recently sold 67 head because they haven't been worth too much. And all of the years until last year, I've had to pay income tax on what I've made on my cattle because I'd sell some of them for breeding purposes and others to buyers whom I know. And so I have done that. But I felt that maybe I better just kind of cut down. I have only 36 now, and I'm just keeping those to kind of see whether the price goes up or whether they don't. And I raise my hay. I have 16 acres that I have cut every year for hay. And I usually get from 1,500 to 2,000 bales of hay, and that's enough for my cattle that I keep. I have a large barn that my husband made troughs all the way through, and they're big enough to hold just one bale of hay after another. I have the hay stacked back of the troughs, and I just lift those 65 and 70-pound bales over into that trough one by one until I have enough to feed as many cows as I have. I raise a garden. I would guess it's at least a fifth of an acre, and sometimes when I'm working it, I'm sure it's a half acre. I've had to water it consistently. Luckily, I have a lake up over where my garden is. And that pipe, I stop up one end at the garden with a stick with a rag wrapped around it. Then I go up to the levee and I fill the pipe, the lead pipe, with water. Usually takes about 6 or 8 gallons to fill it. And then I stick a stick with a rag on it in that and keep it very tight until I wade down into the lake and put that under water with a rock on it and then pull out the stick with the rag in it. Then I go back to the garden and pull the stick out there, and I have a great big inch of water coming out, and then I take pipes and put to the lead pipe, just shave them off and stick them in and water the whole garden. Whatever you have to do, you have to do if you have a farm. If you don't know how to do it, you have to learn.
Definitely a trip back in time. Miss Thornton lived another 12 years after that story aired. She passed away at age 93 in 1989.
Next time on Farm Week, it's used for food, for transportation, a variety of industrial products, and it's Mississippi's #3 commodity, soybeans.
It's one of the world's most versatile crops, and last year we grew more than 127 million bushels of this row crop right here in the Magnolia State. But what makes the soybean so special and right now so volatile?
Watch my special report, What is the Soybean? Next time on Farm Week.
Before we go, buffaloes are still popular. Did you know that we have a buffalo park in Tupelo, Mississippi?
But here's a twist. In Denver, a museum spent decades looking for one that disappeared without a trace.
No, he's a large animal for sure.
650 pounds to be exact.
Actually, Taryn, can you grab the back? Okay, now that way.
A bison that takes 2 people to move should be easy to keep track of.
When I arrived, there was only 4 of them on site, and we didn't exactly know where the 5th one was.
Andy Dahl with the Denver Museum of Nature and Science says they've been looking for this one
sometime before 1965.
For more than 60 years.
The 5 of them were historically important to the museum. They're part of the founding collection. This was part of the remaining population of wild bison in Colorado. We have always been keeping our ears out looking for it, but eventually, finally, we got a tip and we followed that up.
Turns out they just needed to look west.
I really didn't know anything about the bison taxidermy mount and why it was in our gift shop.
On top of Lookout Mountain is where Rebecca James works. She's the collections manager at the Buffalo Bill Museum, keeping track of all the artifacts, including the ones in the gift shop.
Once I started putting some pieces together and was like, this might be from DMNS, Natalie Patton, she actually used to work at DMNS, and so she was like, oh, they do have a missing bison, and that is when we decided, oh, we might have something here.
After all these years, turns out the bison somehow wandered into their gift shop and never left.
Could have been moved up here for an exhibit, maybe to be used for decoration, not really sure.
Things weren't necessarily documented as clearly with all the paperwork like we do today back in those days, and probably in the 1940s or 50s.
Now the bison is back where it belongs, with a new chapter in its story.
That's part of its experience and its journey, so it's a really great story to get it back here. They're in amazing shape for being around 150 years old.
That buffalo really hoofed it up the mountain.
Oh, that's bad. Well, speaking of hoofing it, don't forget Walk Mississippi. We're walking across the state one step at a time over 6 weeks as part of our initiative to help Mississippians get healthier.
Just like these 4-H'ers at the state fair. For more info and to register, head to MSU Extension online. It's right there on the home page. 8,000 steps a day. You can do it. Remember, if you missed a story, look for past episodes of Farm Week on our website at farmweek.tv.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and YouTube. See you next week. Thanks for watching.